What If Qui-Gon Survived? Part 2. Hey there, Star Wars fans, and welcome to the third episode of the Bantha Stew Sequel Week Spectacular. Today, we'll be revisiting one of our most well-viewed stories about what would have taken place if Qui-Gon survived his duel with Maul. So, grab a hot cup of caf, cozy up in a wampa fur blanket to counter the cold winds of Hoth, and let's get right into the story of what would have happened if Qui-Gon survived. Part 2. Buckle in, folks, because this is where the fun begins. Last time, we left things off beginning to settle down in the galaxy. Qui-Gon, who had helped become a fundamental figure in the Rebel Alliance, had passed into the Force. Maul had joined the Jedi, and together they could sense the spirit of Qui-Gon often permeating through their meditations. Luke and Leia were never born because Anakin had never betrayed the Jedi Code under the tutelage of Qui-Gon, even though Order 66 had been executed. Many of the Jedi had ended up joining the Rebel Alliance to overthrow Palpatine. As the New Republic returned to prominence, peace had dawned across the galaxy. One villain, however, still remained. Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters were fuming with Maul's betrayal of their order, even though he had turned to the light and regretted his actions. They prepare in the shadows, waiting to use their magic and strike back at Maul when the time was opportune. How do these events impact the continuation of this story? Let's keep going and find out. One day, as Maul is deep in meditation with his Jedi comrades, something feels off to him. He begins to see shadows, and he hears the whispers of the dead in his ears. Flashes of Dathomir come into his brain, and in the fog he hears the cries of Asajj Ventress, whom he had killed in service of Palpatine. He also hears the angry screams of Mother Talzin in his ears, which make him audibly express discomfort. Maul says no multiple times in a row, and eventually he wakes from his meditative state in a cold sweat. Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Yoda look at Maul, and they ask him what had happened. Maul told them of his mysterious vision, and they tell him that it likely meant nothing. Perhaps it had been a reflection of his old guilt, which Yoda tells Maul he needs to let go of. Maul feels some sense of relief after this conversation, and he thanks Yoda for his guidance. Anakin, however, has a funny expression on his face after he hears this tale, and of Yoda's response to Maul. Being trained by Qui-Gon, Anakin had learned that the ancient masters weren't always right, and that Anakin felt something deeply disturbed in his soul from that vision, and that there was something more than just a deep dive into Maul's subconscious with it. After their meditation session, Anakin accompanies Maul to his quarters in the Jedi Temple. He tells Maul that he doesn't agree with Yoda's assessment, and he asks if Maul would go on an adventure to Dathomir to find out what was truly going on. Maul, initially hesitant, passes on Anakin's proposal. Anakin respects this, and he tells Maul to find him if he ever changes his mind. That night, as Maul is sleeping, he falls into another deep nightmare about Dathomir. He hears Talzin's voice in his head, mumbling words such as traitor and deceiver. He also feels pins and needles digging into his skin as the sisters approach him with the magical green mist in their eyes, and he stands there helplessly as they tear into his skin. Maul screams in his sleep, and this time, Anakin is alert. He'd also been sleeping, but the distress of his new friend brings him out of his slumber. He runs to Maul's quarters and enters them, seeing Maul writhing in an uncontrollable fashion. Anakin calls for Obi-Wan and Yoda, and he notices that they're already there, and they too see Maul's condition. Each of them see that this was the work of the Night Sisters, much like what happened to Dooku in the Clone Wars, and they all pitch in to drive the witchcraft from Maul's body. They combine the powers of the Force to heal and persuade the sisters out of his brain, reaching across the galaxy to push the sisters out of Maul's soul. Because Anakin is the chosen one, he is able to influence the Night Sisters with his mastery of the Force, and he pushes the spells from Maul. Suddenly, Maul wakes up, sweating and breathing heavily. Anakin asks the two Jedi if they believed him now, and Yoda begrudgingly agrees that something is amiss. Yoda says that he is far too old for this type of thing now, and that he would soon pass into the Force. However, he says that Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Maul should investigate what's going on Dathomir. Ezra and Kanan, both of whom survive during this timeline due to the rapid fall of the Empire, agree to help Yoda run the Order alongside Cal Kestis while the others are gone, and that they'll even help teach some of the new initiatives. Yoda appreciates this, and he sends the three Jedi off to Dathomir with his blessing. Maul avoids sleep on this trip. He tells Anakin that he doesn't want to allow the sisters time to infiltrate his mind while it's weak. Anakin places his hand on Maul's shoulder, and he tells him that now he had people who cared about him. If Maul needed rest, and if they saw the first hint of suffering from Night Sister attacks, Anakin and Obi-Wan would be there for him. Anakin says that even though the Council wasn't always right about the nature of the Force, they were still a caring group of individuals, and that they wanted to help him as much as they could. Maul is thankful for Anakin's support, but he still carries with him an air of stubbornness. After being abandoned so many times, and now with the attack from the sisters, Maul feels as though it's his responsibility to deal with these things on his own. Anakin respects this, and he leaves Maul, saying that he would be there when they arrived at Dathomir. Soon, R2 chimes Anakin, letting him know from the cockpit that they had made it to the old world. As soon as they jump out of hyperspace, Maul collapses, grabbing his head. He tells Anakin that the voices are too loud and that he can still hear the cries of Ventress in his head. Once again, Anakin forces his way into Maul's mind, battling for control of it from the Night Sister magic. Eventually, after some strong-arming, Anakin expels him again, and he asks Maul if he's ready to go to the surface. Maul, on his knees, rises to his feet, gulping, and says that his quest is one that he must fulfill. Anakin nods, and they land on the surface of the foggy witch's homeworld. Anakin commands R2 to stay with the ship, and he leaves with Obi-Wan to accompany Maul into the depths of Dathomir. Immediately, the group can sense the malevolent sisters in the shadows. Anakin ignites his saber, and he keeps on high alert, feeling their footsteps in the fog tracking them. Maul also remains composed, but inside he's incredibly anxious, wondering when the sisters will attack him again. As the group continues to move, more and more sisters can be felt in the Force. Anakin starts to become uneasy, wondering when the group should do something about the Night Sisters. Obi-Wan reassures Anakin, telling him that attacking first would only provoke their wrath. So, the Chosen One continues to walk forward, ready to support Maul if need be. Eventually, the witches come out of the shadows. There are at least 30 of them that emerge, and they each hiss at Maul, calling him traitorous and deserving of death. Maul apologizes to them, and he tells them that he's found the light and sees the errors of his old ways. Maul says that Sidious had twisted his mind, and that he'd been thirsty for nothing but chaos and power. The sisters ask why the other Jedi are here, and Maul says that they have come to help him on his quest of penance as some of his best friends. The sisters scoff, saying that once they had been his friends too, and look where that had gotten them. Maul bows his head in shame. Anakin demands that they be allowed to appeal to Mother Talzin, and the sisters say that she had been waiting for them for a very long time. The band of sisters take the Jedi back to the caverns, and deep in the cave, the Great Mother, unifier of all witch tribes, is there, waiting for them. She had been one of the only people that Palpatine had ever feared, and now Anakin could understand why. Her presence was overwhelming, and she towers above him. Anakin demands that she relinquish her hold on Maul, and she simply laughs, saying that she has no qualms with the Chosen One. After all, he had helped defeat Palpatine, and he had been one of the agents who had brought an end to the Sith. She also remarks about the frail-looking Obi-Wan, and she says that he hadn't aged well. She then looks at Maul, staring daggers into his soul. Once again, he collapses to the floor in pain, and Talzin says that Maul deserved death for what he did to the sisters. Anakin ignites his saber, but Talzin, in her mist form, quickly grabs the hilt and tosses it to the side, proving her power to even the Chosen One. Anakin is stunned, but he remains silent, seeing now that he couldn't do anything to help his friend. Talzin then offers to show the group an alternate future, one in which many things had gone differently for the galaxy. It's less of an offer, and more of a demand, as she taps into the minds of each Jedi, forcing them to live out a much darker timeline. Anakin watches himself morph into Darth Vader, and he sees everything that happens in the canon storyline play out. Maul has the same thing, seeing himself build a criminal empire in the shadows and seek revenge on Kenobi through the death of Satine. Obi-Wan is shocked by this alternate timeline where he sees the love of his life die, and watches Anakin turn on everything that he had once held dear. Each of them comes back to consciousness, and they say that they're absolutely shocked by what they've seen. Talzin tells them that that's how her and the sisters had felt when Maul had betrayed them, and that if only one event had changed, the galaxy would be a very different place right now. Maul looks Talzin directly in the eyes, and he tells her that this wasn't the case though, and that the Jedi had worked to build a better order for everyone. Maul pleads with her, asking for forgiveness. Talzin still shakes her head, and she grabs Maul with a green tendril of mist, pulling him close to her. She would have his soul for what he had done, no matter the cost. Obi-Wan ignites his saber, and Anakin prepares his force powers, as his lightsaber had been lost in the mist. Soon, a battle for the soul of Maul would ensue. One of Anakin's favorite powers to use is Force Judgment. He unleashes the yellow blasts of lightning at the approaching sisters, pushing them back slightly. He then turns to Talzin and fires it at her, but she bats it away with a wave of her hand. Anakin then emits a huge blast of Force energy with a huge battle cry, knocking the hordes of witches back against the walls of the cavern. Talzin continues to chant, and she starts to take hold of Maul's soul. Kenobi defends against the arrows of the sisters and tells Anakin to focus on getting Maul back, which he does. Anakin musters all of his energy and the full power of the Chosen One before blasting a spectacular burst of yellow lightning towards Talzin. For a moment, she's shocked. I've done this pun before, but get it? Shocked, because it's Force lightning, but actually it's Force judgment, not Force lightning, but similar idea. Get it? Huh? No, anyway, sorry. That was a bad distraction. Let's keep going. And she's actually knocked off guard by Anakin. Anakin remains composed, breathing heavily, demanding that Maul be released. Talzin remarks that perhaps the stories were true, and that he actually was the Chosen One, which she hadn't believed until this moment. She says, though, that the light must balance the dark, and she then hurls one of her dark spells his way, knocking Anakin backwards. Anakin musters another channeled blast of Force energy at Talzin, but she is focused in on Maul now, enchanting him. Anakin cries out, still trying to free his friend, but eventually Maul begins to speak to them. He says that he deserved his fate, and he didn't want to see Obi-Wan and Anakin die just because of him. Both of them had so much to live for. Maul agrees to submit to Talzin's will, so long as the sisters let his friends go. Anakin denies this momentarily, wanting to defend his friend. However, once he sees the look in Maul's eyes, he can sense that this was how Maul finally found peace, through sacrifice. Talzin agrees to this, and Anakin begrudgingly says one final goodbye to his friend. Maul also says goodbye to Obi-Wan one last time, as the enchantments of Talzin breach his soul, and his body is consumed by the old Night Sister magic. In the end, Anakin and Obi-Wan return to the Jedi Temple somberly. Both of them missed Maul, and they were sad that he had gone out in such a fashion. When they arrived, they each informed the rest of the council what had taken place. Yoda says that they will still hold a funeral for Maul, as he had died as a Jedi, and he had finally found true peace within himself. Anakin tells everyone that he had sensed Maul finally find that inner peace, and that he can hear the voice of Qui-Gon in his head when he meditates, telling Anakin that he had done the right thing. Eventually, Anakin comes to terms with the fact that Maul had needed to experience closure for his actions during the Clone Wars, and even though he had felt that with Palpatine, he was yet to experience it with the Night Sisters. Anakin also goes on to rebuild his saber, which Mother Talzin adds to her collection of strange memorabilia from across the galaxy. Anakin creates a new blade, and this one is still blue, because he is a warrior. Anakin goes on to become a powerful Jedi, more powerful than he had already been, remembering Maul. How do these events impact the end of our story? Let's find out. Maul's story is one that lives on through the Order as one of true redemption through sacrifice. While his soul now belonged to the Night Sisters due to his treason, he had sacrificed it in a way to free his friends from the grip of Talzin, and he had finally found closure. Anakin speaks about how much he had respected Maul during his funeral, and the Jedi lift his soul into the next life. Maul is venerated with a statue outside of the Jedi Temple, and eventually, when Obi-Wan and Yoda both pass into the Force, and Anakin becomes Grand Master, he often regales new initiates with stories of Maul, and how one day, perhaps, he would return to the Order after his service to Talzin. The Jedi Order continues to grow, and Maul's legacy is one that has an important impact on the foundation of hope that the Jedi instills throughout the New Republic. Good day, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this sequel video. If you did, I'd recommend checking out the first part, What If Qui-Gon Survived, if you haven't already. If you have any thoughts about our follow-up story, please share them in the comments. Would you like to see this continued even further? If so, how do you think that the tale would proceed? Have a fantastic rest of your day, my friends, and as always, I hope that you've had your daily delicious dose of nutritious Bantha Stew.